The night was thick with silence until Maya slammed the door, her chest heaving as tears streaked down her mahogany skin. She whispered, "How could you leave me so broken?" Her voice cracked, trembling between rage and despair. The empty house echoed with the sound of absence, shadows crawling across the walls. A ring lay on the table, glinting beneath the dim lamp, mocking her pain. The memories of love and betrayal clashed inside her like a storm tearing through fragile walls. Every breath felt like drowning in betrayal's bitter taste. Maya pressed her palm against her belly, unaware of the secret life within. The loneliness was unbearable, like the world itself had abandoned her. She screamed into the night, raw and unfiltered. "I gave you everything, and you left me with nothing." Her cry faded into silence, leaving the air heavy with grief and unanswered questions. The morning after felt no lighter. Maya sat at the kitchen table, staring at untouched coffee, her thoughts racing in circles of what-ifs and whys. She whispered, "He promised forever." The empty chair across from her mocked her solitude. Memories of laughter at this same table twisted like knives. Sunlight streamed through the window, indifferent to her brokenness. She pressed her forehead against her hands, trembling, her ringless finger exposed. The silence around her felt deafening, every tick of the clock reminding her of time wasted. Her heart screamed for closure, but pride stitched her lips shut. Later, Maya wandered into the bedroom where their laughter once lived. She traced her hand along the cold sheets, the emptiness beside her louder than words. She whispered, "This bed remembers everything." The scent of his cologne lingered in the air, stabbing her heart with invisible blades. She sat at the edge, head bowed, hair falling into her face, sobbing softly. Her body trembled as memories clashed with reality. She curled into herself, hugging a pillow, as if it could answer the silence. She walked into the hallway where family portraits hung, her gaze catching one of them smiling together. Rage flared, and she yanked it from the wall, the glass shattering on the floor. "Lies," she muttered, her voice jagged with grief. She stared at the broken image, fragments reflecting pieces of herself. A sob tore from her throat as she collapsed to her knees, hands shaking above the shards. Her reflection looked back at her through broken glass, a woman torn but unyielding. That night, the storm outside mirrored her turmoil. Rain battered against the windows, thunder rolling above. Maya stood at the window, forehead pressed against the cold glass. "I gave him my soul," she whispered. Her tears blended with the storm as lightning illuminated her face. She clenched her fists, nails biting into her palms, her body trembling with rage and longing. The darkness beyond the glass stared back, offering no comfort. Yet in her heart, a fragile ember of defiance burned. She would not be destroyed. Maya sat on the porch steps as dawn broke, the sky painted in soft pinks that mocked her turmoil. She whispered, "I should feel stronger by now." Her chest tightened, the weight of broken vows pressing into her ribs. The cool breeze carried scents of jasmine, yet it brought no peace. Her phone buzzed with missed calls from her best friend Lena, but she lacked the courage to answer. Every vibration was a reminder that silence was slowly eating her alive. She hugged her knees to her chest, fighting to breathe against the emptiness. The world woke with birdsong, but she felt trapped in shadows, still bleeding from love's betrayal. Later Lena arrived, her footsteps light, but her gaze sharp with concern. Maya tried to smile, but her lips trembled. Lena said, "You can't carry this storm alone." Maya's reply was a whisper, "I don't know how to let it out." The tension between them stretched like glass about to shatter. Lena placed a gentle hand on Maya's shoulder, grounding her. The weight of friendship pressed against Maya's chest, both comforting and suffocating. The silence that followed was heavier than words, filled with unspoken truths and shared pain. Maya opened an old journal, flipping to pages filled with scribbled dreams. Her fingers traced words once written in hope, now faded by reality. She whispered, "I wanted a life where love never left." Tears stained the ink, blurring her own handwriting. Lena sat beside her, silent but present, her eyes reflecting both pity and strength. The journal felt like a graveyard of promises, each line a ghost haunting her. Maya closed it sharply, saying, "Maybe I was a fool to believe." Her words shattered the fragile quiet like glass breaking. That evening, Maya stood before the mirror, staring at her reflection. Her eyes were swollen, her face lined with exhaustion, yet her posture stiffened with defiance. She muttered, "He won't see me broken." She adjusted her dress, smoothing wrinkles with shaking hands. Lena watched from the doorway, whispering, "Strength isn't hiding the scars, Maya thought." Maya's lips tightened, refusing to answer. The silence between them revealed the truth. Healing was a war she had to fight within herself. Night fell, wrapping the house in quiet. Maya lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling as shadows stretched across the room. She whispered, "Love made me, and love destroyed me." Her voice cracked as her hand drifted back to her belly, her secret pressing against her silence. The world outside hummed with life, but within her walls, time stood still. Lena had gone, leaving Maya alone with the truth she dared not speak aloud. Her tears slid silently, soaking into the pillow, each one carrying the weight of unspoken confessions. Maya's heart skipped a beat as she saw David standing at the gate, his silhouette framed by the fading golden hour light. Her pulse quickened, a mix of anger and longing rising in her chest. She whispered to herself, "Why now?" Her body tensed as she fought the urge to run. He shifted, his broad shoulders hunched under the weight of years of regret. "We need to talk," David called out, his deep voice carrying both command and plea. Maya clenched her fists, the memories of their love and betrayal crashing together like waves against rocks. She wanted to scream, to tear him apart with words, but something inside her froze. She stood there, motionless, torn between the past she couldn't let go of, and the anger that was still so fresh. "I don't know what you want from me," she muttered, barely audible, but loud enough for him to hear. He took a step forward, but Maya remained rooted, her heart pounding in her chest. David closed the distance between them slowly, his footsteps heavy on the gravel path. Maya's breath quickened as she fought to hold her ground. "Nian." He stopped just a few feet away from her, his face unreadable. "Don't," Maya said, her voice trembling despite her attempt to sound firm. She could feel the weight of his presence, his longing and guilt pressing against her. David's hand twitched as though he wanted to reach out but was afraid of her rejection. "I made mistakes, Maya," he confessed, his voice raw with emotion. Maya's lips parted in disbelief, her laugh coming out shaky and bitter. "Mistakes?" she repeated, her voice rising. "You shattered me." She could feel the heat of her anger rising, mixing with the hurt she had never allowed herself to fully express. The silence between them thickened, both searching for something to say, but finding nothing that could bridge the chasm they had created. Maya looked at him one last time, tears welling in her eyes, and whispered, "You had your chance." Maya turned her back to him, her chest rising and falling with each breath, as though she could escape the storm swirling inside her. She gripped the porch railing for support, trying to steady herself. She couldn't look at him. "Not yet." David's voice broke the silence. "I never stopped loving you." His words sliced through the air, and Maya's heart twisted painfully in her chest. She couldn't tell if his words were a promise or a plea. Anger surged within her, sharp and jagged. She gritted her teeth, her fists tightening at her sides. "Love doesn't abandon," she hissed, the words dripping with venom. His shadow stretched across hers as he stepped closer, and for a moment, the world seemed to pause. Maya could feel the pull between them, the undeniable connection that had once bound them so tightly. The memories flooded back, of long nights spent laughing and making love, of promises made under the stars. The ache in her chest grew unbearable. She wanted to melt into his arms, but her pride held her back. She could feel her resolve crumbling. "You don't get to come back and rewrite the wreckage you left," she whispered, barely audible, but every word hit like a bullet. David's hand slowly reached for hers, but Maya flinched, her body recoiling from the touch she once craved. He stopped, a mere inch away, his fingers trembling in the air. "Please, let me explain," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Maya's eyes snapped to his, fury igniting within her once more. "Explain what?" she demanded, her voice shaking with the weight of her emotions. "That I was never enough?" The words burst out before she could stop them, raw and painful. David's gaze dropped to the ground, his face filled with shame. "I thought I was protecting us," he whispered, barely audible. Maya's hands trembled, her whole body quaking with the anger she could no longer contain. "You destroyed us," she spat, the words burning with the truth she had long buried. The silence that followed was deafening, thick with unspoken regrets. Neither of them knew how to move forward, trapped in their own pain. The night settled in around them, wrapping the world in darkness. Maya's voice was barely a whisper as she spoke, her words fragile but firm. "You don't belong here anymore," she said, the finality in her voice undeniable. David's jaw clenched, his eyes glinting with unshed tears. "I'll fight for you," he vowed, his voice thick with emotion. Maya felt a pang deep inside her, a longing she couldn't erase. But the words she had long suppressed rose to the surface. "You're too late," she whispered, her breath hitching. The silence that followed was suffocating, the weight of the unspoken truth crushing them both. They stood there, inches apart, yet a lifetime of distance stretched between them. Their shadows, long and distorted in the dim light, were all that remained of the love that once was. The morning after their confrontation, Maya felt the weight of her secret pressing deeper into her chest. She sat at the kitchen table, staring at the untouched coffee, the quiet of the room amplifying the tension in her mind. "I can't keep running from this," she whispered to herself. Her hands trembled as they gripped the mug, a bittersweet reminder of everything that had been left behind. The sound of a doorbell cut through her thoughts, sharp and insistent. She froze, knowing who it was. David stood at the door, his presence a storm waiting to break. "Maya, I need to talk," he said, his voice firm but laced with desperation. She wanted to slam the door, to refuse him again, but something stopped her. Her fingers brushed over her belly unconsciously. She wasn't ready for this, for the man who had torn her heart apart to come back into her life. Yet the secret inside her pulsed with life, a constant reminder that she couldn't go back. David's face softened when she opened the door, but the moment the door creaked open, he knew something was different. "Maya," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "I need you to understand." But Maya cut him off. "You need to leave," she said firmly, though her voice cracked. Her hand instinctively rested on her stomach, betraying the fear and vulnerability she'd been hiding. David's eyes followed the movement, and a flicker of confusion flashed across his face. "Maya, what's going on?" he asked, his tone gentle but insistent. She hesitated for a moment, the words hanging between them like a tightrope. Finally, she looked up at him, her face torn between defiance and the overwhelming reality she could no longer ignore. "I'm pregnant," she whispered, her heart pounding in her chest as the weight of the truth settled in. David's expression shifted, his face a mixture of shock, guilt, and something else she couldn't place. David stepped inside, but Maya didn't move. The words that had been building in him for so long came out in a rush. "You don't have to do this alone, Maya. I'm here. I always have been." His voice cracked, filled with something raw and unhealed. She shook her head, her voice trembling as she whispered, "You weren't here when I needed you most." The words burned like fire as they escaped her lips, and David flinched. He reached for her, but Maya took a step back, her body stiff. "I'm not asking you to fix this," she said, her eyes hardening. "I'm not asking you to be a part of this baby's life." The air between them grew thick, heavy with the weight of their past and the unspoken words that lingered. Maya could feel the tears rising, but she wouldn't let them fall. Not now. She had to be stronger than this. "I don't need saving," she added, more forcefully than she intended. "I just need you to leave." David stood motionless for a moment, as if the weight of her words had physically struck him. He finally spoke, his voice softer now, as though breaking through years of pride. I'm sorry, Maya. I'm so damn sorry for everything. His words hung in the air, laden with the history they had shared, the mistakes he couldn't undo. Maya's face softened for the briefest moment, but then she stepped back as though to protect herself from the growing tenderness between them. Sorry doesn't change what's been done, she replied, her voice firm, though her eyes betrayed the pain that still lingered. You hurt me, David. The silence stretched as she struggled to hold her composure. Her hand rested again on her stomach, the gesture tender and protective. This child deserves better than what we had. The finality in her words shattered the fragile hope that had been building in David's chest. He could see the resolve in her eyes. She was done with him. As the sun began to set, the weight of everything that had been said and unsaid pressed heavily on Maya. She felt like she was standing on the edge of something she couldn't control. I never wanted this, she whispered, her voice breaking slightly. I never wanted to be this broken. She lifted her gaze to meet David's, her eyes filled with tears, but her expression remained resolute. I can't go back to you, David. We can't go back to that. David's face twisted with pain, but he didn't move closer. I understand, he said quietly. But I'm not going anywhere, not this time. I'll fight for you and this child, if you'll let me. Maya inhaled sharply, the words sinking deep into her heart. She wasn't ready to forgive him, but a small part of her wanted to believe in his promise. The thought terrified her. The evening air was thick with tension. Maya stood by the window, her heart racing as she stared at David, who had returned to her doorstep once again. He was different now, or at least that's what he wanted her to believe. Maya, David began, his voice low, almost pleading. Please, just hear me out. Maya shook her head, feeling the weight of his words press on her chest. You think you can fix this? After everything? Her voice cracked as she spoke, and for a moment, she felt the ache of every moment they'd shared, every promise broken. She stepped closer to him, her eyes filled with anger, regret, and raw emotion. You can't just come back into my life like nothing happened, David, she spat, her voice rising. You walked away, you shattered me, and now you think you can just pick up the pieces? Her breaths were shallow, her hands clenched at her sides. The tears burned, but she refused to let them fall. She wasn't going to be broken by him again. Not now. Not ever. David's chest tightened as her words hit him like a fist. He took a step forward, then stopped himself. I don't expect you to forgive me, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I need you to understand that I was lost too. I didn't know what I was doing. Maya's eyes flickered with disbelief as she stared at him. You were lost? She repeated, her voice sharp. I wasn't lost, David. I was left behind. Her words sliced through the air, cutting deep into the fragile wall he had tried to build around them. David took another step forward, this time reaching out as if to touch her, but Maya pulled away instinctively. I didn't ask for this, she whispered. I didn't ask for the pain, or the betrayal, or this child, not without you. The silence between them was suffocating, the truth hanging between them like a thick fog. Maya's chest rose and fell with the weight of everything she had been holding it. Her gaze never left David's, even as her body trembled with the force of the storm raging inside her. You say you didn't know what you were doing, but you hurt me anyway, she whispered, the words barely escaping her lips. You broke me, David, and I don't know if I can ever heal from that. Her voice cracked on the last word, but she held her ground, her shoulders straight and her head high. She had never felt more vulnerable in her life, but she refused to let him see it. David's eyes softened, filled with remorse, but Maya wasn't ready for his apology. Not yet. Not when the pain still felt too fresh. I'm sorry, he whispered, his voice breaking. But Maya shook her head, cutting him off. Sorry isn't enough anymore, she said firmly. You don't get to erase what you did with words. You don't get to undo the hurt. David stepped back, his head hung low. The weight of his own mistakes crushed him, but Maya wouldn't let him off the hook that easily. You think it's that easy? She asked, her voice shaking. You think you can just walk back into my life, say sorry, and everything will be okay? She let out a bitter laugh, but it was hollow. It's not that simple, David. You don't just get to play the hero now. You don't get to undo the years of pain with a couple of words. Her heart ached with every syllable, but she couldn't let him see it. She couldn't let him in again. Not after everything they'd been through. I don't need you to save me, she continued, her voice steadying. I've learned to save myself. David looked up, his eyes pleading once more. Maya, please. His voice cracked, filled with desperation. But Maya couldn't bear to hear it anymore. The silence that followed felt like an eternity. David stood there, unsure of what to say next, his chest rising and falling with the weight of his emotions. Maya's gaze softened, but the hurt was still there, buried beneath the layers of pride and pain. I can't do this anymore, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I can't keep living in the past. I have to move on, for myself, for this baby. David's heart shattered at her words, and his knees nearly buckled. Maya, please, he pleaded. I'll do anything. Just give me a chance. But Maya shook her head, a single tear slipping down her cheek. It's too late, David. I've already made my choice. She turned away from him, her back to him now, the finality of her decision hanging heavily in the air. A few weeks had passed, and the air between them had grown less heavy. Maya found herself sitting by the window, the warm light spilling over her, but the silence had returned, peaceful yet still uncomfortable. The phone buzzed beside her. She picked it up and saw David's name flash on the screen. She stared at it for a moment, her heart fluttering in her chest. The decision was still raw, but she had made it. She didn't need him to fix her. She had rebuilt herself piece by piece, every day pushing through the memories, the pain, the betrayal. But now, in the quiet of her home, she could feel her body and heart healing, one slow beat at a time. The ringing stopped and she exhaled, placing the phone back down. There was no more running from the past. There was only today. The phone buzzed again, and this time Maya answered. Hello? Her voice was calm but uncertain. David's voice came through, thick with regret. Maya, I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about us and the future. Maya's heart raced, but she steadied herself. I've been thinking too, she said softly. I can't pretend I'm not scared, David. I don't know if I can trust you again, but I'm learning to trust myself. Silence lingered for a moment, and then David responded, That's all I can ask for. Maya's eyes drifted to the soft glow of the city beyond the window. I'm not asking you to fix everything, she said. But I'm not shutting you out either. She paused, feeling the weight of the conversation. Maybe one day, we'll get to the place where we can figure out what this all means. The days turned into weeks, and slowly, things began to change. Maya felt the weight lifting, as if the chains she had bound herself with were breaking piece by piece. She spent more time with her friends, with Lena, talking about the future. The baby grew, and each movement inside her was a reminder that life was moving forward, whether she was ready or not. One evening, she stood in front of the mirror, her hands resting gently on her stomach. A small smile curved her lips as she looked at herself, her reflection stronger than ever. She wasn't afraid anymore. She had come through the worst of it. The pain, the uncertainty, the fear. They were all still there, but they no longer held her captive. She whispered to her reflection, I'm going to be okay. David came by one last time, standing at her doorstep with a small bouquet of flowers in his hand. Maya looked at him, her expression unreadable. I don't know if I'll ever be ready to forgive you, she said, her voice steady but filled with sorrow. But I'm willing to give us a chance. Not because I think we can just pick up where we left off, but because maybe, just maybe, we can build something new. David nodded, the weight of her words settling on him. He handed her the flowers, his eyes filled with sincerity. I'll take whatever you're willing to give, he said quietly. I'll do the work, Maya. I won't give up on us. She held his gaze for a long moment, the past lingering between them, but something in her heart softened. She nodded, feeling the first flicker of hope that they might find a way forward, together, one step at a time. As the weeks went by, Maya and David found themselves talking more, slowly learning how to navigate their complicated history. They didn't have all the answers, but they were no longer running from the truth. Maya had learned to trust herself again, and as she grew into her new role as a mother, she realized that her strength wasn't just in surviving. It was in learning to live again. One quiet evening, sitting by the window, she felt David's hand slip into hers, his touch warm and grounding. "We're not perfect," he said, his voice low, "but we're trying." Maya looked at him, a soft smile tugging at her lips. "And that's enough," she replied. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she felt at peace. It had been months since that painful goodbye. Maya stood at the edge of the park, her body humming with energy, the evening breeze tugging at her hair. The sun had just begun to set, painting the sky in warm hues of orange and pink. She had healed. She had moved forward. But the memories of David, of everything they had been through, still lingered like a shadow in her heart. "I thought I'd be afraid of forgetting you," she whispered, her voice soft against the wind, "but I'm not." Her fingers ran gently over her swollen belly, a reminder that the future was something she was creating, something she had power over. The world was moving forward, and so was she. But part of her still wished she could have given him a chance. Still, she didn't know if forgiveness was something she could offer him. But she was okay. She had finally let go. Later that evening, Maya sat on her balcony, looking out at the twinkling city lights below. Her phone buzzed once more, and this time, it was a message from David. The words were simple but loaded with years of emotion. "I'm sorry for everything. I'll never stop loving you." She stared at the screen, her heart squeezing in her chest. She had wanted to hear those words for so long, but now, they seemed like an echo from a past that was too painful to revisit. She put the phone down, taking a deep breath as the cool night air washed over her. "I know," she whispered, not just to the message, but to the wind, to herself. "I know." She wasn't angry anymore, and she wasn't sad. She had finally accepted the love they had shared. It had shaped her, but it didn't define her. The next morning, Maya walked to the park with her best friend, Lena. The sky was clear, the air crisp, a perfect day for a fresh start. They sat on a bench, watching children run by, laughing, playing, and chasing after kites. Maya smiled as she felt the soft kick of her baby inside her. "This is it, Lena," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "This is my future. And I'm ready." Lena smiled warmly, squeezing Maya's hand. "I know you are, girl," she said. "You've always been stronger than you think." Maya laughed softly, but the tears in her eyes were a testament to how far she had come. "I'm not the same person I was, Lena," she whispered. "I'm not broken anymore." And for the first time, Maya truly believed it. She wasn't the woman who had been abandoned and betrayed. She was the woman who had chosen to heal, to grow, and to embrace the future with open arms. A few weeks later, Maya stood outside her doctor's office, a piece of paper in her hand that would forever change her life. The ultrasound had confirmed it. Her child was healthy, strong, and perfect. "I'm doing this," she thought, her heart pounding with excitement and nervousness. "I'm really doing this." As she walked down the street, she passed by a couple sitting on a bench, laughing and holding hands. A part of her wanted that, the security, the shared dreams, the promise of a family. But she was no longer searching for someone to complete her. She was already complete. She had created her own path, and she was proud of it. "I don't need him to be happy," she thought. "I am enough." She looked down at her belly, placing a hand over it. "We're enough." Maya stood in front of a small but cozy apartment building, her keys in hand, ready to start this new chapter of her life. David's figure appeared in the distance, walking toward her, his expression serious. She stood still, her heart steady but uncertain. "I know I can't change the past," David said, his voice raw. "But I want to be part of your future, part of this baby's life." Maya looked at him for a long moment, the weight of their shared history between them. She wasn't sure what would happen, but she had come a long way from the woman who had once been afraid to live without him. "I'm not sure what the future holds," she said softly, "but I know that I have the strength to face it no matter what." She turned and walked into the building, David following a few steps behind her. The door clicked shut behind them, and for the first time in a long while, Maya felt at peace.